What are we doing tonight, Bert? What are we here for? What are Loot Shooter Boys doing on a Sunday night?
On a Sunday night. Yeah, so I'll guess I'll just introduce it. So we are the guys from Loot Shooter Weekly. I'm Gaber Tank Burt Reynolds, and with me, as always, is the Golden Voice of Gaming Negan Killjoy. There he
What
is.
up? What
Those
up?
Christmas colors, huh? Kind of red and
Christmas
green.
colors.
That's
Yes.
yeah. Look at you.
Still a
Look at
holiday.
you.
New Year's hasn't quite kicked off yet, so it's still kind of the Christmas holiday feeling going on.
It is. It is. And, we're here tonight. You called it out. This is not a Loot Shooter Weekly show tonight. This is actually a build video. We're doing a build video that was requested by a friend of ours through our Discord, the Angelic and Beastly Creatures Discord. And he asked for a build video for a build I gave away a couple weeks ago. It's a Zane build, and we had talked about doing a build video for it, and I think just in the holiday rush, we decided not to. Because it's just a variation of a build by Moxsy. And I believe Moxsy calls this build Double O Agent, something along those lines. It's a new build using the Spycam, or Spycam. Yeah, that would also be accurate. Spycom. And
Something spy related. You'll get it.
Spy related.
You'll get it.
Yeah, we'll show it to you in a minute. I called it something the effect of Agent on the Rocks, I think is what I called it, or Spy on the Rocks build.
Spy on the Rocks, indeed.
Spy on the Rocks. Mine's a little different than his, and I have some different gear that I used. When I took a look at Moxsy's build, which I love, and so I'll do credit to Moxsy, the build is fantastic. But he put some pieces into this build. It was right when the new DLC had dropped, right when Arms Race dropped. So he used the Beskar shield, which isn't a bad choice, and we'll talk about that. But I chose to go kind of a different route with it, and so I made some adjustments to skill tree, certainly to the weapons, and I made an adjustment to the shield that makes it focused a lot more around ice. So hence the on the rocks, because we're going to turn everything into ice cubes, like we did once upon a time with a frozen snowshoe and a deathless on Moe's. This is going to do the same thing, but on Zane. And you and I ran this build through the Guardian Takedown. And I think
we did.
Yep.
Did two Zane double up, I believe.
We did, yeah. And you're running that Zane build. That's the last Zane build that I did, which was the Siamese Snow Goblin, which is a clone build. Clone and Sentinel. This does not use Sentinel, and so it does not use Sentinel cryo. This build uses the Spycom and the shoulder cannon and a shield. So it's a little different. Actually, the two opposite skills of what your build is using. And
That's
so
right.
rather than talk about it too much, we're just going to get right into it. So I'm literally going to show you the skill tree, the gear. I think I'll probably actually start with the gear and the weapons because they are probably the biggest difference from what Moxsy did. And then I'll show you the skill tree and where I made adjustments. I'll try and call out what I did a little differently than what he did. So without further ado, I give you Spy on the Rocks.
Dun dun dun. Spy on the Rocks.
Spy on the Rocks. So I'll start down here actually with the gear, not the guns. And I'm going to start in the Icebreaker Victory Rush that I'm running. He ran an Icebreaker Victory Rush in his. I'm running one in mine. I actually have a whole bunch of different ones that I could run for different scenarios. The one I'm going to run tonight has shock damage. You might say, why shock damage? If you're focusing on cryo and double, or on the rocks and ice and all this other stuff. Well, the Icebreaker Victory Rush is actually already giving me damage against cryo. We were running in the Guardian Takedown the last time I ran this build, and obviously shock is very strong in the Guardian Takedown, shock and corrosive. So I doubled down on the shock here because virtually all of my weapons, save for the pistol, are going to put out shock damage, and I really wanted to enhance that shock damage. And then we have action skill cooldown rate because we want our cannon back very quickly, and you'll see why in a second. And finally, area of effect damage, because I'm going to be putting out ice, a lot of ice that is splashy, and all the guns that I have in my selection here tonight are also splashy. Area of effect damage is just code for splash damage. It's called area of effect damage on your artifact. It's called splash damage on your comm. It's all splash damage.
And so the area of effect, since it is splash damage, it's based on where your pellets or where your weapons hit. That's where the damage starts, and area effect from there. It's not from where you're located.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, or where you're, probably the most common place that you get area of effect damage, even on a build that's not splash oriented. The most common place you can get is from your grenade. Now, the irony in this is I can't throw grenades. I still have a grenade, but I can't actually throw them
because you're Zane.
I'm Zane, and I don't have any specs into any of the talents that allow any of my augments to throw grenades either. So, literally in this build, that grenade gets used for nothing but the anointment on it. Just saying. But for most people, area of effect damage is going to come into play with either splash weapons that they're using. You'll see it comes into play with my shield, or it'll come into play with grenades that they're throwing. Moe's obviously being the big exception here, because Moe's has a lot of splash damage in her skill tree. Amara does as well, if you spec into the new purple skill tree. And she does splash damage from her melee in a lot of cases. That's the one I chose to go with here. When I'm mobbing, I would probably just go with this very high cryo damage and area of effect damage, or I could have, again, more action skill cooldown rate. I can have movement speed. We are still going to have some movement speed in the damage formula for Zane, but not like it is with Sentinel. Or I could go with magazine size if I wanted bigger mag sizes. So I have options. Any Icebreaker Victory Rush, in essence, will work. One with area of effect damage is going to be your best bet.
So explain what the Victory Rush does. Why are you using Victory Rush in general?
Well, the two pieces of this, right? You have a prefix and then you have the actual artifact. The Victory Rush, basically what happens is when you kill any badass enemy, you're going to get movement speed and extra damage for 60 seconds. Am I always going to be killing badass enemies? No. There's just not really a better option here. Because what I really need is the prefix, Icebreaker. The Icebreaker gives me bonus damage against frozen enemies, and it gives me bonus cryo efficiency. Okay. Since I do have a little bit of cryo focus here, that's what I'm really looking for. I could do an Icebreaker auto-idle if I wanted some extra health on kill. I could do anything as long as it's an Icebreaker, right? And I do have some Icebreaker auto-idles. I don't need any extra health on kill, so I'm not going to use it, but I could. So the Victory Rush, that's less important, but that's what I chose to run here.
Okay, so the Icebreaker is the key that you're looking for. Anything with Icebreaker is what you're going to be looking at or looking for.
Yeah, Icebreaker with area of effect damage are probably the two biggest keys. Like, Icebreaker would be the number one, and second to that would be you want area of effect damage, especially if you're going to run this build, and I'll tell you why when we get to the shield. The grenade is actually unimportant. You could run any grenade. I wanted the 50% bonus corrosive damage. That's really what I need. So I'm going to almost always be both triggering action skill active and action skill end in very rapid succession because of the shoulder cannon. So I'm going to have basically 100% uptime on this action skill end 50% corrosive damage. So I want it there all the time. That's going to be my source of corrosive damage in this build. Other than that, any grenade. Purple, blue, as long as it has 50% corrosive damage, or, you can, the beautiful thing here is I can trade out. I don't have maybe I have a shock one with me. I don't need more shock damage, but I can basically, if I had one of each element in here, I can trade out what element I get on ASE. The comm is going to be the key to this guy. This is a secret swab spy comm. You'll see here that I have actually, this comm can actually roll with points into the capstone. So I'm getting an extra point in the capstone. I forget, and I should know these, Negan, and I'm not so used to the purple skill tree yet, but I'm getting commitment, which is giving me gun damage, and Arm and Flynt, which is going to give me bonus damage when I'm aiming down sights. So I'm actually going to want to aim down sights with this build, which is weird for Zane, right? I mean, that's not normal for Zane. But those are how my points are distributed.
It's a little abnormal for Borderlands 3, to be honest. Aiming down sights is a little abnormal for that too, but that makes sense.
It is, and you'll see
25% damage. That's pretty good bonus damage just right out of the gate.
Big buff damage, right? This build is never going to be hurting for extra base weapon damage. It has a ton of it. It's going to hurt in other areas, and that's what we're trying to pick up here. So you can see I actually have splash damage on the comm, weapon damage, and mag size. The splash damage is because I'm really going to try and run basically all splash damage weapons, partly because I'm already so strong in weapon damage that what I really need to do is get in other elements, and I really need to get in some other sources of damage for the multipliers. We've talked before about the damage formula. You want both additive and multiplicative. Splash damage is going to be multiplicative here. Frozen Heart. This is the big change. So where Moxsy ran a Beskar, which you can see here, I actually have a really god-rolled one with resonant on it, so it reflects 130% of the damage thrown at me. It's a very good defensive shield. And it's slightly offensive if people are shooting at you, but not reliably so. Whereas I felt I could make a really good CC build here with all that splash damage. The Frozen Heart, because I'm going to be constantly triggering on action skill start, basically means I can just run around the field to play, freezing everything into chunks of ice, which we will see. And then I'll always be triggering the ASEs on my guns. So that's the gear. Any questions on the gear, Negan?
Nope, makes some sense so far.
Okay.
Because you swapped out the shield, you just swapped it out for where Moxsy was using the Beskar, you swapped in for the Frozen Heart, so you're good there.
Frozen Heart.
Okay.
If you're going down all the time, you could put the Beskar on, you could put an old god on, but if you want to run the build the way I think this build is best run, you're going to run it with Frozen Heart. And I run it with the Heart versus the Snowshoe because the Heart actually will heat when the Cryo Nova goes out, it actually heals itself. On the Snowshoe, it's when you slide. That's what heals the shield. So I want the Cryo Nova to heal the shield, and so that's why I'm running the Frozen Heart versus the Snowshoe. Guns, I have a Trevinator in here with Shock. Again, I'm really trying to double down on Shock. Trevinator in here because it does splash damage. I have a more Rapture Rebound. It's a 2x. Again, the rebound does splash damage. It's Shock. I have the Superconducting Plasma Coil. It does splash damage. It's Malawan. It's Shock and Radiation, but I'm going to use the Shock side of it. I am going to call out. This is where the first time I'm going to call this out, and I'm going to show it to you in a minute. If you go down into Fight for Your Life with this build, you are screwed. You are going to have no damage. Almost all of this build gets its gun damage after a kill. And because I'm not running the Seeing Dead, I actually have to get that kill. I mean, Seeing Red does help with it, but not like Seeing Dead. The combo of Seeing Red and Seeing Dead together is really what makes, Zane strong, even if he goes into fight for his life. When I go into fight for my life with this, I have no way to get out of it, virtually. Other than the fact that they gave us this super OP gun called the Plasma Coil. I also don't have my clone. Normally when in the build you're running Negan, the Siamese Snow Goblin, if I go down in the fight for my life, I just switch with the clone. Or sometimes my clone gets a kill, and then that gets me back up, right?
Yes.
You got none of that.
What do you kind of count on? You don't got that now? Okay. All right.
So if I go down, I'm in trouble. This is how I'm getting out of that with the Plasma Coil. Finally, I'm running.
Talk about again why you're going with Shock. You seem to be leaning into Shock. Was that because this is built for the Guardian Takedown, or are you going?
Because it was built for the GT. No,
okay.
It's just for the GT. That's really what it is. It's Guardian Takedown.
Okay.
Venomous Hornet. this one has cryo damage ASE. On this one, I should say, has radiation damage ASE. Those next two mags, I'm basically going to have 100% uptime, right? Same with the splash damage. I'm going to have 100% uptime on it because you'll see when we run the build, I'm basically firing my shoulder cannon every 4 seconds. I'm never going to run out of charges. If I'm not throwing or shooting the shoulder cannon, then I'm, dropping my shield. All of these things are going to trigger on-action skill active and on-action skill end. So I basically get 100% uptime. I'm going to move on to the skill tree real quick here and run through this. This is basically going to be 2 capstones. I have the blue capstone and I have a purple capstone. I have nothing into the red tree, a little tiny bit into the green tree. I'm going to actually start with the purple tree this time because it's new. And I've put 5 points into mana focus. This is going to give me accuracy and handling. Anytime I activate an action skill, which again is virtually going to be always. I did max this out to move myself down the tree. I did put 1 point here in Deja Vu. This just gives me a small % chance to add back ammo. I'm not going to run out of ammo a lot. I am going to have to reload quite a bit, but that's what it's really doing. It's just a small chance. You can trade points between these two any way you see fit. So you could go 5 and 1, like I did. You could go 5 into this and 1 into this. You could go 3 into this and 4 or 3 into that. I mean, these two are not really that important to the build. So however you want to break it down, I'm not going to need to regenerate this health, and the health you regenerate is worthless. So I skipped that one. Headman's Hand is basically going to give me an increased critical hit damage anytime that I get a kill. Zane gains increased critical hit damage. Effect stacks twice. I can get up to 60% additional critical hit damage here. That's very valuable. Obviously going to be some additional damage, but it is a kill skill. This is also a kill skill. Commitment. Zane gains increased gun damage and action skill cooldown rate. Gun damage up to 54%. So after I get that first kill, a lot of gun damage. Fugitive. This is going to help with the fact that I need to aim down sights. So when it says Zane can sprint and shoot at the same time, everybody can sprint and shoot at the same time in this game. I can aim down sights and sprint at the same time. That's a big difference. And I'm going to aim down sights a lot more with this build because you're going to see when we get to capstone, I'm getting a lot of damage there. Domino effect is critical hit. Anytime I score a critical hit, I gain increased fire rate and reload speed. I use this to move down the skill tree because the other one here is just a little bit of extra gun damage, right? I have so much gun damage, I don't need more gun damage. So, and it's only for one shot anyway. If I were going to do some bossing, I could put them here. This one, though, seems to be the better option. That reload speed's going to come in handy. My critical hits pierce through enemies and deal increased damage for every enemy pierced. I can actually shoot through enemies here. This is actually a very valuable skill. My other option here would be additional action skill cooldown rate. Well, here's the funny thing. I can pick that up off my artifact should I choose to at a much higher rate. Again, I don't need more action skill cooldown rate. You're going to see that we don't have a problem with that. Finally, our man Flynt. This is going to give me bonus damage and automatically apply status effects when I score a critical hit. That bonus damage is 50% damage, or 50% of damage dealt. So while aiming down sights, my weapons deal bonus damage, automatically apply their status effects when a critical hit is scored.
And of course, since you're trying to get critical hits, which is why the aiming down sights becomes a big deal.
Correct. Yep.
If you're aiming down sights, you're supposedly aiming at the head. It's the ideal situation for you.
And when they say applies their status effect, right? Mm-hmm. This is going to do electrocute. It's going to ignite enemies. It's going to freeze them if it's cryo. And it's going to melt them if they're corrosive, and it's going to radiate them if they're radiation weapons. So very strong skill. I am going to use the Cold Shoulder Mantis cannon. Again, here, this is really going to help freeze enemies. I'm totally sold out between the shield and the Mantis Cannon into freezing enemies. You'll see they're frozen a lot. This is just going to give me additional Mantis Cannon shots. It's going to move me from 3 to 5. Blue skill tree will look kind of similar to a lot of other blue skill trees you've seen. I've got Violent Speed. This is going to give me movement speed after kills. Violent Momentum is going to give me additional gun damage when I'm moving quickly. I don't have the Sentinel speed coming in from my shield, so, again, I don't need a ton more gun damage, but this is the most valuable place to put it. Cool Hand, after killing an enemy, I get, again, additional reload speed. I'm going to have a lot of reload speed. I will be reloading quickly. This is better source of lifesteal than the one that's in the purple tree, so I took my lifesteal here. See in red, activating action skill is going to activate my kill skills. Not as good as the See in dead does, but it is going to do that. Violent Violence, this is going to give me fire rate after I get a kill. I have 5 into Plain Dirty here. Again, these you can switch back and forth between. You could even them out, whatever you want to do here. But, this extra shot chance at 75% is pretty good. An extra projectile is actually a lot of extra damage. And so, I think that's a good place to put it. Good Misfortune. This is different. So this, I will say that this, trying to think where else, are different than what Moxsy did. He only put 1 into this. He only put 1 into this. He might have put some into either Cold Bore or more, and he probably put more into Cool Hand. I'm not as worried about Cool Hand. The reason is I found with his build that I was not always able to keep the shield up. And as all of us know, you want to keep it up. You definitely want to keep it up. You're a letdown when you don't keep it up. So I put more into this.
No shield, no fun, as they say. No shield, no fun.
No shield, no fun. Nobody likes to see their business go down.
That's right.
Right. And I put more in here because I'm not running that Beskar, right? So I needed a little bit more lifesteal. Death Follows Close is awesome. One of my favorites. All of Zane's kill skills gain increased effect and duration. Finally, in the green skill tree, this is how I'm going to keep my shield up a little bit longer. Again, Zane has improved shield recharge rate and shield recharge delay. Here's where I'm going to get all of my cryo damage that I'm going to get on my guns. Whenever I score a critical hit, there'll be a chance to be slowed. This effect stacks so they get to be frozen. That's where I'm getting some of my cryo from. Again, you're not going to see a lot of cryo in my skill tree, and I don't have Sentinel cryo. Distributed Denial.
From Brain Freeze is what you're getting it from?
Brain Freeze is where I'm getting it, yep.
Okay.
And all of that's working my way down here to Distributed Denial, which is super strong. This actually allows my barrier shield to take on the effects of the shield I'm wearing. In this case, it's going to be the Frozen Heart. So now my outer shield will throw the cryo. What do they call those things?
The Nova?
Blank. The Nova. So now my outer shield will throw the Cryo Nova. And it just gives it a wider range. You'll see stuff freezes very far away from me. I am going to run, as far as augments on that, I am going to run Charged Relay. Whenever I or anyone else touches the barrier, they gain increased movement speed or reload speed for a few seconds. Just good, skill to run in a group. And finally, my barrier is going to become a drone covering all sides. This is the hamster ball. That is it, Negan. That's the build. It is, again, different than Moxsy's. Skill tree's different. Pieces are a little different.
The cannon. Did you talk about what you did as far as running the cannon?
So the cannon is really, again, augment-wise, I went with Cold Shoulder and the extra charges in it. It's going to help freeze things. You'll see when we get into, I'll show you up here, when you look at the cannon, I have tons of uptime on it, right? I mean, just a ton of uptime on it. And now that once I get a kill, that's going to go to 5. And it's going to be very, 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 consistent in uptime. Or if I do this, you know, pick this up, I can just basically spam that cannon. And if I'm getting kills, I can spam it even harder. So when we get up there, that's what that's going to look like. Now my shield is going to go down because the only thing that's going to keep my shield up is me getting kills, and I'm not getting kills. So we'll wait for that to come back. You can see how quick my skills come back. So when we get up here, they do, yeah. So I'm going to throw my shield down. Stuff's going to freeze. Now, Nogs, I will say Nogs do not freeze. So that's going to be a problem. Why is my cannon not firing? So now that my cannon's working, this is going to go significantly better. And then, you know, I will show you at some point here, I will let myself go down on purpose with some enemies around, and I will show you how hard it is to get out of fight for your life with this build. That is the one drawback to it. Just sucks, right? I mean, it's just not fun. And also, you cannot, for whatever reason, you cannot freeze Nogs. And what that is, just FYI, they will get cold and it will do damage to them, but they cannot be frozen, like solid. So you can see here, there's the cannon. You can see every time I fire the cannon, basically everybody just turns into a big, fat, stinking block of ice. And they go away very quickly. Like that guy.
They do go away. Holy crap.
Yeah. Yep. And as long as I'm getting kills, that shield's going to stay up. Now, if I stop getting kills, that shield's going to go down. And
that's pretty common with the Zane build, though, that you do build your shield off the kills and stuff like that. So that's not an uncommon trait for you having to make sure you get kills.
It is not.
It's these dry spots that make you crazy as Zane main.
Right. It is dry spots that make you crazy as a Zane
Gotta run
main.
through, and you gotta stop, gotta be all patient. Strategy-wise, how do you play it? Do you play this up close, or do you?
I actually play this pretty.
Or?
I play it pretty up close because the freezing effect is most powerful. Now, here's one enemy I can't freeze, which is a frostbite. Can't freeze the frostbite guy. He's going to be a little bit immune to my freezing abilities. And you can see just how strong ASE splash weapons are. I mean, look at how that just chips away at that guy. And I am going to pick a guy here and let them take me out. Just because I want you to see how bad this can go for me when I do go down. That's going to always be my one weak spot. Okay, so I've gone down. Basically with this gun, I'm going to do look at this, I'm not doing anything to that guy. So now I'm going to have to switch, right? And what I'm going to switch to here is going to be, and I may not even get this. Yeah, I got it. I am going to switch to the plasma coil, because the plasma coil is so broken strong that even if I'm in fight for my life, and even if I've lost all my kill skill damage, the plasma coil can basically get me out of it. It's almost a guarantee. Maybe not quite, but it's close. And everybody's an ice block again. And that guy's dead. So you can see there that the build, I mean, it hits hard, man. And it's extremely effective against plates in the Guardian Takedown. I think this has become, obviously the plates are the most miserable part of that whole experience for a lot of people.
Yeah,
they're not wrong. It is a miserable experience. And yet this build makes plates kind of fun, honestly. Quick shout out here as well to the fact that the other assault rifle I normally, like the plasma coil becomes your SMG of choice. You can run a beacon if you want the splash damage. You can run a light show. Light shows don't do any splash damage, so they won't They won't take advantage of that splash damage that's on the comm, but you can totally run a light show because they're very strong. And now see, here I am going to go down because there's nothing to kill, and I accidentally shocked myself. So you do have to be a little careful with the... You can shock yourself by being in water with it and picking up those ASEs. Because those ASEs will suddenly apply to all the AoE damage that you're doing. So if you have area effect damage, all of your ASEs apply to that AoE damage. I will also say, like, the light show is very strong, and the light show is very strong on Zane, pretty much period, because Zane is able to take advantage of all the extra projectiles. So I do sometimes run that. And for this, my quick shout out to probably one of my favorite guns here, which is to run the Train Chaos. The other thing that's interesting here, if you really want to double down on that damage coming from...
Why the Train Chaos?
I just like Dahl. I'm a
Dahl?
huge Dahl fan, and it does splash
Dahl
damage.
Fanboy, I forget about that.
I'm a diehard Dahl fanboy. Now, you will lose out on your ability to get out of fight for your life easier, but I do want to call this out. You'll notice a great synergy here. The Smog has this awesome synergy called when I'm aiming down sights, I get bonus damage. Well, when I'm aiming down sights with Zane, I'm getting bonus damage anyway because of my skill tree. And so that becomes an extremely strong combination to have those two together. Problem is, in Fight for Your Life, aiming down sights is not a particularly great decision. So I don't recommend it. So if you're going to run the Smog, which is very fun to run on this build, extremely fun to run on this build, I will tell you then that in your third slot, or in your fourth slot, you either need to be running a Sandhawk, or you need to be running a Backburner or Plague Bearer, because that's going to have to be your Fight for Your Life weapon then. You're going to need to have a good heavy that does single point damage.
Real question, how long Chupacabra going to take?
Oh, well, if you want him to go fast, not long at all. Just get a couple crits on him.
There you go. And just saying, you're doing all the work. I'm just here for the ride, man. Watching.
Yeah. And Chupacabra will always go fast on this build, even if you're not shooting him, Negan. Now, I will say as well, though, for just for the fun, Negan running the
Snow Goblin?
The Siamese Snow Goblin and this build on the Rock Spy or Spy on the Rocks is an awesome combo together in a takedown, because everything is always frozen. Nothing's ever not frozen, basically. I must not have done this mission yet on this guy, because there's no one here. But yeah, nobody's ever not frozen, right, Negan? I mean, it's like the whole map is just between the two builds and their ability to apply cryo. There is just like, it's basically never ending. Everything is frozen. Now I am going to look, because that is a frozen guy. I am actually going to look for somebody else to shoot. And you'll see here my Smog is not going to get me out of Fight for My Life at all. And in fact, nothing's going to get me out of Fight for My Life right now, other than nothing.
All right.
Once you're down with this build, if you don't have a gun on there that's good for Fight for Your Life, you are in trouble. You really are in trouble. So, I mean, I really feel like I have to run the plasma coil. And that's probably the only weak spot in this build, is if you go down, you're not getting back up. That's just not going to happen.
So you want to play aggressive, but aggressive with some caution. Cautiously aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, or you want to play in a group, or you just want to keep the plasma coil on you. Now, had I had the plasma coil, or, I mean, again, you can run a back burner. Like, if you want to run something else in the SMG slot, then run a back burner, because the back burner will get you out of fight for your life. And then you just got to make sure that you're saving enough heavy that you have it when you need it. But again, the CC is so strong on this that it's not like a huge problem.
No.
Right. It's not perfect, but I mean, you ran that Guardian takedown with me. I was not going down very often. I guess I'm being a little careless here because it's just trash mobs, and I'm really playing up when I probably don't have to. The other thing is, you are not going to run into immune enemies that are immune to cryo in the takedown. Part of the problem here is we have a lot of frostbite heavies, and they're basically immune to everything I'm throwing at them.
Right.
It happens. My cannon does nothing to them. They're just totally immune to it.
They shrug you off, as they say. Just shrug you right off.
They do. They shrug me off, and they just shoot me straight in the face.
They give no fucks.
They abuse me, Negan. They just straight abuse me.
Totally abuse you. Exactly.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm used to it. So that is the build. And with that, I think we're going to sign off because I wanted to keep this short, and I think I actually went longer than I wanted. But, again, I will just quickly show you, just real quick, the skill trees. Purple tree here, so you can kind of take a record of it. This is the blue tree. Again, we have nothing into the red tree. And finally, the green tree. You can watch Moxsy's video if you prefer a little extra survivability. Trade out those trade back out those skill points. Put on the Beskar. The Beskar will definitely do you right. There was nothing wrong with Moxssy's build in any way, shape, or form. I just have a lot of fun with freezing everything and turning them into ice chunks. And I didn't need this. Once I did that, I needed a little bit more survivability in the skill tree. I do think, you don't, if you run the Beskar, you really don't need any survivability in the skill tree. That shield's going to keep you alive. Makes you virtually indestructible as long as you don't go stepping in elemental puddles or stand by barrels. And that's the build, Negan. That's it right there.
Nice. Well done. Well done.
Yeah. So, with that, we here at Loot Shooter Weekly, myself and Negan, thank you for stopping by and checking it out. And Negan will do, as always, our official sign-off.
Great. Well, good build. I enjoyed it. That's a nice addition. Like I think I talked about briefly before, I probably will be switching to this one just to see how it runs compared to the Snow Goblin. But on that note, everybody else, see ya!